Hi there, and welcome to episode 25 of The Green Room. I am today joined by James. Hello, James.
Hi, Nick. How are we? You alright?
Not too bad. I'm not too bad.
Good. Have you had a nice few days? We're here with Harry as well.
Hi there.
Still off camera.
Yes.
Eventually. We're getting closer. Maybe Christmas.
I like the mystery of it.
Maybe at Christmas. The big reveal. How are you guys?
I'm very well. Had a very good few days with some of our supporters. How do you say Green Age?
Supporters.
Yeah, some of our fans. Just out in Europe a little bit, talking about business. And
presumably you went by boat.
yeah, because it's so tricky and so much traffic on the roads these days. But boat's probably easier. I had a very good few days. I was looking forward to this podcast, actually.
Good. It's your weekly relief.
Yes, it is, yeah, and I think it will follow on a little bit what we talked about last episode. So last episode was all about tips and tricks of how do you, prepare for winter and stuff.
Right.
So this week we're going to pick out one key aspect of what we talked about and just explore in more detail. And that aspect is
boilers. I know they're around there nervously. Boilers. So we're going to discuss all things heating, boilers. So this hopefully podcast is going to be useful for people looking at getting a new heating system, someone who has a boiler in the house, and wondering what to do with it all, essentially. Shall we just start? There we go. Go on.
And the reason that I wanted to mention that is because you nailed a few facts for me. So I think with some record listeners on our podcast.
Oh, we did. We're doing all right there.
And how were they listening to us?
They are listening to us via several mechanisms. No, they are listening to us via podcasting. Sort of, what are they called? Streams?
Apps.
Yeah, apps. There we go. I'm showing my age here.
You've had a child for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, no,
it's like boring old
dad brain. So you can listen to us. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, and I think a lot of people now are watching us.
We're on TuneIn Radio as well.
And on TuneIn Radio, sorry. And the easiest way is actually go to the Green Age website. The Green Age website, if you go to the top right, there is a button that says podcasts. And you can click on that and then subscribe to any of those different apps. Thank you, Harry, for that pointer there. And then you can listen to us on the commute or whatever. And hopefully, therefore, it will be useful for you. Is that okay? Is that covered where you can listen?
Brilliant. Yeah.
I mean, if they want to watch us, YouTube, that's the place, right?
Yeah, and do leave us comments and questions and feedback. Yeah, we do seem to be getting a lot more of that. And Harry, between Harry and all of us, we try our best to come back to you.
And the feedback tends to be largely positive. Is that fair?
Yeah, my mum thinks it's great.
Yeah, exactly. And we're getting some questions that we will endeavour to answer in future episodes. But back to heating. Mm-hmm. Do you want to give us a bit of background?
Yes. So. Boilers, what would you say, probably from the 1970s onwards in terms of mass adoption. Yep. So obviously there's boilers a bit before that, but in terms of gas boilers, because it coincided with a large discovery of offshore gas in the North Sea. So before that, we all thought it would be nuclear with storage heaters.
Yeah.
But then we made that discovery of gas. Helped the economy somewhat, and from a domestic perspective, a lot of installations of gas boilers, because obviously the fuel is quite cheap, so very easy to run, etc., etc. And then over the years, the efficiency of that technology has got better and better, and right now they are incredibly efficient, incredibly easy to run, and pretty much up and down the country. So how many boilers are in gas and... Well, all types of boilers.
Gas, oil, the whole lot. So
we've got just off the top of your head.
27 million.
26 million, actually.
Damn it! 26 million boilers.
But we will be 27 by the end of the year.
It might be because in 2017, which is the last time we have data, there was 1.6 million new boilers installed. So that is a lot of busy gas engineers, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And so basically, I think if you look at the number of homes and the number of boilers, it's almost like 100% correlation. I know there are different heating systems in there, but most people have a gas boiler.
Yeah.
Or an oil boiler,
yeah,
I should say. And so that is providing hot water and heating for their homes. So this hopefully is relevant, this podcast, for loads of people.
So just before we get into the different types, the main distinction historically has been the advent of the condensing boiler. So there was a big kind of switch about 10, 15 years ago from non-condensing to condensing. So what would you say the main difference is between the two?
So when a boiler burns, it is burning... Sorry, let me clear my throat. No, it hasn't cleared it at all. It hasn't in fact made it worse. So when a boiler when the gas burns in the boiler, it produces, we produce hot water, basically. There used to be, and there still is, lots of exhaust fumes that come out, exhaust gases that come out. Now what they're doing now in condensing boilers is using the heat from those gases, from the exhaust gases, and using that to heat the water before it goes back into the boiler. So basically, previously, boiler turns on, gas burns, heats water, and then the exhaust fumes just go out. Now they take the heat in the exhaust fumes and that heats the water before it goes back into the boiler. So that is a condensing boiler.
So you'd say roughly mains water temperature, may vary, say 10 to 20 degrees. So I guess if you're going from 10 to 20 degrees to 80, 90 degrees, that's a big step.
Yeah.
But say from those recycled gases, if it's
even
starts at 40
marginally
or
higher,
50 degrees, then to go 40, 50 to 80, 90,
I mean,
it's a lot less energy. It's more efficient.
Yeah, basically that's it. And I think it's very, very minor, in fact, the temperature increase. However, the savings and the efficiency, we're well up into the 90% now for a boiler. So every unit of gas that is burnt, you are potentially getting 93, 94% sort of units of useful heat, right? So it's almost one-to-one. So
when people talk about how efficient electricity is, yes, it's true, it's always one-to-one. I mean,
unless talking heat pumps.
But boilers are not too far, basically.
No, they're not. And when you look at the cost of gas compared to the cost of electricity, then it sort of further reinforces why people go for gas boilers, because a unit of gas is about 3.5p, a unit of electricity is about 12p, 12 to 15p, right? So it's about a third, quarter of the price, gas. So it is a lot cheaper to heat your home in that way. It's slightly ironic, however, that in our energy mix, so if you take the UK, for example, the amount of electricity that we get from gas power plants is enormous.
Yeah.
So we're still using, even if you're using electricity in your house, much of that electricity is from gas anyway. So instead of gas coming into your house and heating it, it's just gas, electric, and then into your house. So it's a bit weird.
And it's funny. So if you look at the big picture, there seems to be a big confusion in terms of the policy mix. So while on the one hand, you get certain aspects of government policy going, well, we need to move towards more gas, i.e., the fracking aspect and the fact that, it's lot less polluting hydrocarbon.
Yeah.
But it is in the same family as oil and coal and all of that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then on the other hand, there's a movement say, right, we need none at all, no hydrocarbons at all, and we need to move fully to renewable energy and that sort of stuff.
I know, but I think the
and it's always a clash. It's so you kind of get this duplicity in terms of.
But there's also, because I know the government, and we're going to talk about it shortly, but the government are pushing to get rid of boilers, right? To get rid of gas boilers, but. There is an installed...
But yet they're wanting to frack,
They're wanting to frack, but there's also... We have all the mechanisms to deliver gas to properties already in place.
Yeah.
So it seems a really weird kind of thing, and it's going to be hugely expensive.
And more homes are getting connected to the gas network, and that hasn't stopped. Because, Harry, you get lots of calls about that. So how do I get a gas connection?
And what's the answer?
You ring your gas distribution network, and how do you
Which
find that?
You go on the internet.
Yes.
Yeah,
Good old
so
Google.
basically, there's 4 companies that each cover different areas of the UK, and depending on what area you're in, one of these companies will be the relevant people to connect you to the gas, and they are the only company that can do it. In each area, they have a monopoly. Only this company can do it. So if you go online, we'll put a link to the map for finding out if you're interested in getting connected to the gas distribution network. then we'll pop a link to the map where you can find out exactly who you should be speaking to. But it'll be one of these 4 companies.
And it's not cheap.
No.
Right, I think we should prepare people for that.
Yeah.
If you don't have gas in your house, it is expensive.
But it varies a lot. I mean, if your next door neighbour's got it, then it's going to be a lot cheaper than if
if they've got to dig
But
the
if
road.
you're a village that's never had gas and you want gas into the village, it'll be incredibly expensive.
But as a collective, you might
Yeah.
say it depends, Right, so that's kind of a bit of background. So there are lots of different types of boilers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so why don't we just chat very briefly about the different kinds?
Yes, and so I was just going to say, so in terms of condensing one, my dad asked me, how do you know our boiler that we've got, how do you know our Baxi is a condensing boiler? And I say, well, look, when you look at the boiler, if you look at all the pipes coming in and out, there's a white outlet pipe.
Little plastic pipe.
Yeah, so that comes out, and then it's connected to a salt stack, basically, because it obviously, the vapor's got to condense somewhere, and that's
So that's how we know if we have a condensing boiler.
and sometimes you might have troubles with it. So if we have a particularly cold winter, you might have a condensing pipe that freezes, and then
Then you're in trouble.
well, unless you've got a hairdryer, of course.
Yeah. Don't pour boiling water on it so you can crack it.
Before we started recording, I asked James how he would tell if someone had a condensing boiler.
No.
Like a different
Combi boiler.
combi boiler. Oh,
Right, classic
Oh.
mistake. Okay, so that leads us on nicely, Harry. Very good. So, not to be confused with a condensing boiler, our first type of boiler is a combi boiler, combination boiler. Right, so bit of background, a combi boiler, they came into fashion sort of early 2000, and basically what you're doing is you're doing away with all the tanks. You need relatively good water pressure, but the water comes into the house, so cold water comes into the house through the mains, goes through the boiler, gets heated up, and it's spat out at any sinks, or taps, or showers, or whatever, hot, straight away. So it's on demand. So you're never storing hot water. So they're a really nice idea.
So this office has a combination boiler.
But things like flats, they're brilliant because you don't have any tanks. They are obviously the tech in them is a bit more developed. It's a bit there's more things that could potentially go wrong.
Yes, you've got two heat exchangers. You've got one for the hot water and you've got one for the heating.
But then, I think it's worth saying. So if with a combi boiler, they're very, very easy. If I turn on a tap in in a bathroom, and I turn on a tap in the kitchen, it will split that feed, right? So you might suddenly your shower or your tap is dripping out, both of them, because you've taken the hot water and you split it between the two taps.
the combi boiler is the one where if your brother is in the shower, you can turn on the hot tap so that
His shower suffers. Exactly. But likewise, so if I've got the heating on, if it's really, really cold, I mean, it's unlikely your house is going to get cold that quickly, but if I've got the heating on and I want to go and jump in the shower, my heating will turn off, the shower will get hot. While I'm in the shower, there's no heating, so there's no hot water running through the radiator system, because it has to be one or other. And so that's kind of a couple of the downsides, but I think in terms of ease... they're really nice.
I'll tell you the downside as well. So our house has had, I think, 2 swaps already, because basically the old before the Baxi one we had, it just kept on. We just had to keep on replacing the heat exchanger. And what the plumber said to me was, it's a bugger if you've got filth in your heating system. So we had to have it, pressured out and the whole thing drained and re-chemicalized. To finally have this one that's in situ, that's touch wood still going on after 5 years. So actually, if the conditions are right and it's installed correctly, there's no reason to to suggest that it won't work properly, because we do get people writing on kind of various blogs and stuff saying how they've always had problems with their combination boiler and how it's a kind of bugger because it can go wrong. But so provided you service it and it's, you keep it in good nick, and there shouldn't be a reason why it won't last a test of time.
Mm-hmm. And I think if you've got if storage is limited and if you're in a flat or whatever and you want to save a bit of space, a combi boiler is a really nice idea. I think they can work really, really well. You can get different capacity, you can get different size boilers. Mm-hmm. So if your heat demand's a bit high, you can get a bigger boiler. You still don't have the tanks, so it's a nice idea. if you have one of the other types of boiler we're going to talk about in a second, it is a bit more expensive because of the pipework changes of suddenly losing the tanks. It's relatively expensive to swap from, say, a sort of regular boiler with a cold water tanks and hot water tanks to a COMBI, right? But if you have an old COMBI, you can swap to a new COMBI.
So let's talk about two types of cost then. So first one, so if you're going from the first example that you just said, so you want to get rid of the hot tank, all of your tanks basically, and reroute the piping system to a combination.
Reroute? Are you in America?
Reroute. Or reroute. So a combination swap will roughly set you back, and this is just an average, of course.
So this is going from an existing COMBI to a new COMBI?
No, from a gravity-fed system.
Fine.
So you get rid of the cold
Get
tank.
rid of your tanks. Yeah.
And you're rerouting the pipework to the new boiler. So it's going to roughly cost you about £3,500.
Yeah.
So about £2,000 for the boiler unit and about £1,500 for the changeover.
Yeah, I think I think £2,000 is relatively high in terms of materials and stuff, but it's so because the boilers are coming in about £1,000 now, but all the additional pipework, etc. Copper pipe is seriously expensive. Found out. So yeah, exactly. Whereas if you're going from a COMBI to a COMBI, what kind of cost? I've got a COMBI boiler at the moment. I want to just get a new one because it's old.
So I'd say about £1,500 to about £2,000, depending upon the model type.
We're going to get loads of comments here from people saying, "Oh my god, I've just got the biggest quote ever." Guys, this is a guide, right? So if you've got bigger quotes, get more quotes. If you've gone to British Gas, get other quotes. I don't want to be rude about British Gas. I just have been, but they charge a premium for the services
because they supply your
offer.
electricity and gas.
They're true.
They might cut you off. They might be listening to this. And,
don't cut me off. So anyway, that's COMBI boiler in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Happy? And so they're running efficiency-wise now. So a condensing COMBI boiler, Harry, is running over 90% efficient.
You notice that I've been quite quiet on this one,
Yes,
just letting you do your thing.
So it's basically 1 unit of gas is turning into kind of 0.9 plus units of useful heat. So they're a really, really good way to heat your home and produce the hot water. So then we go to the more traditional system, right? And that is a heat-only or regular boiler. Now, these have been about forever, and I can say that because we've gone and done these energy surveys, and we have seen...
We've seen some Kestrels,
some
and that's
really
not the bird of
boilers.
prey, it's just an old school boiler type.
They are... We've seen some very old boilers. And
It's like a guy lighting a fire under a bowl.
pretty much. But the thing is, the really old ones, they keep running. The issue is, number one, they're not condensing. And it's very, very difficult. Number two, to get spare
the
parts.
ones that the service always used to worry when I had the homeowner. They said, "Oh, I've had this boiler for 30 years, and I've never had to service it.
No,
and
exactly.
it's been in great nick." I was
Yeah.
like,
I mean, there's a certain argument that they build in, they build boilers to break.
100%. I think that's absolutely what they do because it's a bit stupid and it's sad. There's actually a word for this, and I can never remember what it is. There's a term for it. But of course, you want it to break in 10, 15 years because otherwise you're not going to have a business. The 1.6 million boilers that got replaced in 2017, you'd be replacing 15 boilers in 2018. So it's not, they have to have that. So these heat-only boilers, the regular boilers, the heat-only boilers, they basically, so you have your boiler unit, which tends to be in a cupboard somewhere, and that is heating the water. Right, and then you have a tank. You normally have a hot water tank, or you do have a hot water tank somewhere in the house. Now, that hot water tank, the pressure that forces the hot water out around the house into your heating systems is normally caused by the difference in height between your hot water tank and cold water tanks in the roof.
i.e. gravity, right?
Gravity.
So that's why traditionally the cold tank is up in the loft because
Lots
of
of gravity.
The water's going to drop down to your...
Yeah, we installed, this is not quite related, but we installed a toilet with a slightly higher cistern, like an old-fashioned toilet, and you put it. The water pressure, even from kind of the extra half-metre drop on that, is enormous. So if you're going up another storey, in your property, the water pressure is really big. Typically...
Differential, from top to...
Yeah, exactly. But typically they will, even though the pressure can be, really good in terms of getting the cold water tank a long way height-wise away from your hot water tank, They can put pumps on as well to drive the hot water to showers, etc., etc. So if you've got one of these systems at your home and you're worried that the pressure is really bad, you could install a shower pump, and that will pump hot water from hot water tank to your shower and massively increase the flow rate if you're looking for a stronger shower. Now these, as you said, I mean, we've seen these forever and a day since we've been doing our energy surveys.
Yeah, and so the traditional, traditional boilers with a gravity-fed system, they'll have a. I mean, you could tell pretty much straight away because you can see the flue type. So normally the old school ones, they've got this big open squared flue somewhere, coming
but also
out
the
the
number
side
of
house.
tanks, right?
The number of tanks as well. So yeah, and I've of the surveys I've done in the past, I've found some of them in some really obscure places.
So if you've got one of these, they're relatively simple, so they tend to break less than a combi boiler. They still make them, obviously, so that's very easy to get a old regular boiler replaced with a new one. You can get condensing versions of these boilers. Every boiler now that is made is a condensing boiler. I think that was since 2007. All boilers are, including oil. But it was 2005 where you couldn't install a boiler that wasn't condensing. So don't worry about that. So the efficiency is still incredibly high. Two downsides to this type of boiler. Number one, space. So I've suddenly got to have, unlike a combi boiler, no tanks, I've got my heat only or regular boiler, sometimes referred to both names. I've got a hot water tank and I've got cold water tanks, right? And so there's space. Now, often people don't store anything in the loft, so you've got no issues with cold water tanks.
Yes.
But you still normally, if you need an airing cupboard, you have to have that. That has to be available. So that's a bit of a pain. The other big issue with these ones is I'm storing hot water.
Yes.
And that's the fundamental. So typically, you heat your hot water in the morning for an hour and the evening for an hour. That hot water, if it's not used, will eventually go cold. Whereas a combi boiler is producing it on demand. So I only produce the hot water I use. Whereas this one, I'm storing the hot water.
And normally, so I'd say the feature of these airing cupboards is while they're fantastic for drying clothes, in the winter and stuff, they're terrible at heating losses. So if you've got a copper tank or just one of the more traditional tanks, and you don't have a hot water jacket, or or you do have a hot water jacket, but it's still releasing heat out, then that's heating losses basically. And the second one, another consideration, not just space, is so imagine you've got this 200 litre tank or 300 litre tank above your bedrooms upstairs.
Forgot to turn it off.
It can be the pipes have known to burst.
Yeah.
And all that water, coming down the ceiling.
Agreed. So, there's always that risk.
So you might not want to have that risk above you.
Yeah, no, I agree.
In a literal sense.
There's a benefit of them that people don't really think about, and it's that some people have really bad water pressure. All right, so if you go into your kitchen and you turn the cold water tap on, the water pressure, that is how you basically judge your water pressure. And if it flies out the tap, you've got no issues. Right, so a combi boiler would they need to test it, but a combi boiler sounds like it would work, and a system boiler, which we'll go on to in a minute. If the water trickles out, then one of these systems might be the answer, because you don't need the water pressure, because the pressure is made by your cold water tanks, being in the position they are, and that is making sort of the pressure for you. So that is something that real benefit of them.
One of the problems of hot water tanks in general, I have a lot of siblings, and let me tell you, when everybody has taken their showers all in a row, then little old youngest, Muggins over here, coldest shower.
Hadn't even crossed my mind, but yes, absolutely. You're limited by the size of your hot water tank.
So then you have to sit and wait for
the water to warm up again, which can take time.
Very good point. Very good point.
There we go. Real life
example.
Sorry, that's very David Brent. They're popular. It's pretty cheap. Again, you're looking about $2,000 to go from your old boiler to replace it with a new one of the same version. So this heat only or regular boiler, it's about £2,000 to replace it.
Because there's definitely going to be work on the flue there, and obviously if you're too close to your neighbour, we get lots of this. You might need a plume diversion kit.
But also boilers, they, as you're saying there, if the flues need to be away for a certain distance. So building regs now dictate that boiler flues have to be a certain distance from neighbours' openings and all sorts of things, and your openings, to be honest, your sort of windows and doors. And so, as you say, that can add to the expense of doing this. But it is a relatively cheap thing. They don't tend to go wrong as much as combi boilers because there's less going on inside the boiler itself.
It's literally, there's a mini furnace inside there,
Yes, no, agreed.
And it's just using gas, and it's heating the water coming through. And and all the companies, all the major boiler manufacturers, which we'll cover in a minute, create these things, right? So they work really well. And unfortunately, I don't have the split here of numbers in the UK. Maybe Harry can dig something out in terms of who've got combis, regular system. But then, have we got anything else on these ones? No, that's it. So we're going to move on to system unvented boilers.
Okay.
So this is like basically it's a fully sealed system where, as you said before, the water pressure is not, well, we'll come to the water pressure bit, but the water pressure is decent. So
water pressure has to be really good.
But can you also get a pump? Not a pump, sorry, a device.
You can. It's quite rare to get them. You can get a device to, basically, if the water pressure coming into your house is under 1.5 bar, something like that, it will store that water and fire it from this other storage device to your system boiler.
Yes. And
kind of pretending that it's increasing the pressure, it's stepping up the pressure.
Yes.
If you haven't got the required pressure in your house, just don't get a system boiler.
Okay.
I'd say. Because basically what system boiler is doing, so we've got the boiler unit, so that's creating the hot water, it then gets stored in a tank, and your cold water, mains pressure, comes into the bottom of the tank, and it squirts hot water out the top. Right, so that's how your system boiler is working. So it's not gravity fed, it's literally water pressure coming into the bottom of the tank, firing the hot water out the top.
So basically what you're saying there, James, is if the water pressure is not great, you need to write letters to your water company.
You can, it is. So if you can definitely, because I have done it in my property, increase the water pressure from the mains. You have to spend a bit of money, that's the pain. But speak to your company, Thames Water, etc. They can increase water pressure. I haven't done it on my new property, but in the last one, they can increase it for you, right? And so it therefore gives you that higher pressure coming into your house, which allows you to get both combis or system boilers.
Okay.
Now, the boiler itself is very similar to your heat-only regular boiler. But the difference here is that we have this big pressurised hot water tank. Yeah, so unlike your kind of old copper tanks that you're talking about, you may be familiar with their hot water jackets, these things look much more solid. Is that fair? I mean, I don't know how to describe how they look.
And I suppose, and the limiting factor is on the size what you were talking about, because you can get like a 250, 300 litre tanks even, maybe even bigger than that. So even if you've got multiple siblings, you shouldn't in reality run out of hot water unless you've got someone in the family who spends about 30 minutes in the shower. But
these tanks are already insulated, so you don't really have to worry about heat loss. So you don't have the airing cupboard effect. You don't have that warm room where you can dry.
Yeah, because you come up to the tank itself, you touch the plastic casing, and it tends to be room temperature.
Yeah,
which tells you actually it's.
It's funny what you said about them looking more robust, because I know that my grandma, when we moved her into a little cottage, she was not happy with the combi boiler because she was like, well, where's the water? I don't understand. She really wanted like a proper big tank she could see.
Yeah, I get that. That's fair enough. They're brilliant. They need to be installed by. It's not just gas safe. You have to have an extra qualification to be able to install a pressurised system. Is one thing worth mentioning. The benefits are the hot water pressure around the house, provided your pressure coming into your water pressure coming into the house is half decent. You can have multiple showers at the same time, etc., etc. Multiple water being delivered, to taps, to showers, to baths at the same time, and there's no loss of pressure.
And the other reason it's a feature of the hot tank that you get. So basically, you can have a dual feed tank, so which then allows you to get solar thermal.
Yeah.
So that's the neat stuff about it. So actually, if you've got solar thermal panels, you just get these types of tanks, but actually will have a dual feed. So one feed will take the hot water that's heated from your solar thermal panels, and the other one will be where it's topped up by from the boiler itself. Mm-hmm. So actually, that's quite neat. But obviously, the cost there will be a lot greater because they'll have to run pipes up to the solar thermal feed to your roof, etc., etc.
But the system boilers tend to be found in bigger properties where there are more bathrooms, etc., where a combi boiler just wouldn't really be appropriate. If you've got multiple bathrooms, a combi boiler doesn't quite cut the mustard. So it's they're very, very popular, and you may have heard of the hot water tanks themselves, Mega Flows, Joule. We've mentioned them a few times, right? Valent do one, you said, and so they're the three main systems. So you've got your combi, no tanks at all. You've got a regular heat only boiler, which has the cold water tanks up in the loft, and that is producing the pressure, which is driving the system. And then you have a system boiler, which is completely sealed, and it's all based on the water pressure coming into the tank.
Mm-hmm. So there's one thing I'm not quite sure about. So when it comes to the fuel type, so you can have condensing boilers are oil powered, LPG, which is gas, but it's instead of actually getting it from the mains, it's stored somewhere in your property. And then you can have
gas?
No, the wood
pellets,
biomass boiler. Sorry, I was thinking about that. But
you've had a good week away.
Yeah, I've had. But I'm not sure. One fact I'm not sure, and Harry maybe could check is: can you get a combination oil-fired boiler?
I'm going to say no. I bet you can. No, because I think so. Gas, obviously, you can burn it light straight away.
Yeah.
Whereas oil, I think they need to warm it first to thin it,
right? To
then burn it. I'm making that up. That's probably not true.
Yeah.
But it would make sense.
No, I think you can.
Okay, so
so all these three types that we talked about is not necessarily determined by the fuel type. So you can have a gas, you can have an LPG, and you can have biomass
and oil. The other thing that I think we need to make clear is all three types of boiler, regardless of what you have, is capable of producing your hot water and does your heating as well. Right, so it's not just one or other. Now, mainly the hot water is produced by, as Nick is saying, the pellets, the gas, the LPG, etc., etc. Lots of the tanks, if you go with a tank system, and this is an issue with combi boilers, we need to do costs of system boilers, but going back to combi boilers, one of the issues there is that if your combi boiler is on the blink, you have no hot water, right? As soon as you have a hot water tank in your house, there tends to be an immersion switch, which is basically, it's like a kettle element going into the middle of the hot water tank and producing hot water. So if I'm ever got an emergency, or, as you were saying, you're in the shower and there's no hot water and I want to top it up really quickly, I can either run the boiler again or I can press this immersion element and it will heat it like a kettle is heating hot water. They are incredibly expensive to run. The number of properties we have been in and the immersion switch is on all the time is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Now, hot water tanks have a thermostat, so once they reach a temperature, that should turn off the immersion unit. But in some cases, they're not there, right? So these things are running all the time, essentially, your immersion units.
And that's why the people that complain is, I've got a gas boiler, but my
electricity bills are so high. So turn off the immersion. Immersions are there to use when your boiler's broken, or you need a little quick top up of hot water.
A lot of people do their immersion heaters with solar panels.
Yes, using things like Optimmersion, things like that. Yeah, which is really clever. It's taking the excess electricity and pinging it to your immersion unit. The other thing is if you're on economy 7, so if you're on a dual tariff, typically where your hot water is located. So if I have like electric storage heaters, but I still want hot water in my house, I could have a hot water tank that isn't producing heating, because I've got the storage heaters that are producing the heating. But at night, when electricity is cheaper, it's going into the immersion and heating my hot water, and then that's for use during the day. So you get different kind of different setups and different properties. But the immersions are used. But if you've got a gas boiler and it's working, don't use the immersion. It's a very expensive way to heat water.
Mm-hmm.
Was that ticks that one? System boilers. So I mentioned it there.
Yeah.
A system boiler is expensive to install, right? Because you've got your boiler, which is, as you know, £1,000 plus. You've then got the tank, which is almost £1,000.
But then if you're getting solar thermal as well, that could be £2,500.
But then you've got all the different pipe work. It's pressurised. The installer needs a special qualification. Have we found out what that qualification is? I want to install it. So the whole cost of installing these.
But also, haven't they
spend £5,000?
And they also got to be tagged onto a certain manufacturer as well. So someone like Ariston, or what's the one we always talk about?
Which one?
The hot water tank.
Megaflow,
sorry, yeah. Haven't you also got to sit in their training course as well and be...
Well, you have to be qualified to install, because it's a pressurised system.
Yeah.
You've got really, really hot water and it's pressurised, so if it goes wrong, it's going to spray hot water everywhere. You need to know exactly what you're doing.
And that's not good, yeah.
And you need to check, therefore, that your boiler engineer is qualified to install them. So that's...
For any boiler you're getting installed, you want to make sure that they're on the gas
safe register.
Gas safe register, yeah, which you can check online.
Is it? And what's the pressurised system qualification?
I can't find it.
Okay, fine.
Maybe we can put it in the
We'll
comments.
put it in the comments.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the comments. So they're the main types of boilers that you're going to find in properties. Do you want to fire through the other ones?
Yeah, so biomass, which we talked about. I think we talked about in the podcast before. But essentially, unlike using gas mains or just gas or oil, it's using pellets.
Yep.
So, and I suppose the drawback of that is you've got to have a certain type of property type. So you've got to have the space. It's got to be out somewhere in the countryside because of all of the combustion.
You've got to clear the pellets because the ash.
Clear the pellets and ash. Yeah, so it's basically you need a lot of space to store the pellets, and then you need to kind of be constantly feeding it. So it tends to be popular on sort of rural properties, farms.
Mm-hmm. Can't have one in London, can you? Because of the
clean air.
Yeah, clean air stuff.
Right. So that's one feature of that, and obviously, yeah. So then, if you're going for one of those systems, again, you know they are incredibly expensive.
They're expensive. They're expensive, and they were really, really popular because the renewable heat incentive, which was a government subsidy, essentially, or a government payment for people that installed them. For every unit of hot water they were producing, they were getting paid by the government. And those payments have stopped.
Nope. You're thinking of feed-in tariff.
But they've gone right down.
They're much lower than they used to be, for sure.
And so you just be careful on it, and you've just got to run the numbers because they're expensive to install. You know, we were seeing people pay 12, 13 grand to get one of these things in.
They work well in agricultural settings where you can use byproducts and whatnot.
Yeah.
To burn.
If you have lots of logs.
Yeah.
But most of the smaller domestic ones tend to only use the chips, the little wood pellets, and so therefore you're a bit stuck there. Even if you have lots of logs in your house, can't do anything with them.
So the other type, which is quite rare, and people thought it would really take off, is the combined heat and power, or the CHP.
I think it will really take off. I just don't think we haven't got the technology
yet. Yeah. So it's essentially you've got a combustion process, as you talked about in the boiler process, and as a result of that combustion process, it produces steam, and from that steam, that drives a secondary unit, which then drives a generator, and that generator then produces electricity, and that electricity, as a byproduct, goes back into your consumer unit, and then obviously can power things like lights and electronic units, etc. It works. The principle works very, very well. But if you think about how you use the boilers domestically, you'd have to be basically combusting the boiler would have to be working all the time to generate the electricity. I.e., you'd have to run the hot water stands all the time. So where it actually is very, very good is in a commercial setting. So things like swimming pools, places where they use the manufacturing process. So they need to generate heat pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
So commercially very, very good, and it is used extensively when people are building kind of new factories and things like that. The other one is electric. So I saw quite a few of those in over in East London. I was doing an EPC project recently, and the amount of electric boilers.
Did you know that Fisher make an electric boiler? Fisher heaters.
Oh yes.
Okay. Wouldn't buy it.
Basically electric boilers, they take electricity, which is more expensive than gas, and that uses to then heat your hot water tank if you have it, or it can be it can heat the hot water instantaneously as well, but not that popular just because of the price of the electricity. More likely to have a storage heater, as you said, because then you can
storage heater and hot water tank powered by the Immersion.
We get a lot of people. Well, I get a lot of people asking me if they have an oil boiler and they ask if it's worth swapping over to electric. What would you say?
Depends. No, a good oil at the moment cheap, so I would say keep it.
Dirty though.
Dirty. So if it's for environmental reasons, if that's the way you're positioned, then why not?
But I'll go heat pump.
So my sister had an oil boiler and went to a ground source heat pump when the renewable heat incentive was right up there, and it paid for the cost of the heat pump comfortably, and including the £11,000 holes they had to drill. And suddenly for every unit of electricity, you're getting kind of 4.5 units of useful heat. So it's a really clever technology.
We need to do a full podcast on heat pumps.
Yeah, I think that's
James. What's a back boiler?
A back boiler.
Sorry,
right.
I'm being facetious. I know what it is, but
these are old, back to the old school, right? They're very old, and when you walk into a property and you see the kind of gas fireplace, I imagine they're on Coronation Street.
Yeah,
right?
so
Is that fair? They're kind of those really old boilers that old people really like and tend to have. While they're producing, they kick out heat, they also they have a big tank behind them and they're producing hot water. You cannot get spares for these things anymore. So people that have back boilers get in touch with us all the time and want to know where you can buy spares. You can't.
You can buy spare parts for them
on eBay.
No, don't buy the ones on eBay.
No, I agree.
They make fake parts. So if you are going to try and keep your
back boiler
alive by swapping out parts, make sure you go to the actual manufacturer.
But the other thing is, they are not condensing.
They're just
right. So they are old boiler types, and your efficiency is going to be sort of 60%. A new boiler 90%. Right, so you're getting essentially a third more bang for your buck on each unit of gas. So please get rid of your back boiler. Put a new boiler in.
Places like
Help the economy.
they do kind of a hybrid-y type thing, and they talk about it like it's kind of a new back boiler.
It's not.
It's
really not.
They're just trying to make people feel comfortable because people like back boilers.
Yeah, but don't like back boilers. Don't be
people
that
feel
guy.
comfortable because they can't see it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So one other one, you've probably seen. Well, not seen, but it's always kind of in this outhouse. But it tends to be a feature in high rises. Is community boilers.
Yeah.
So you can have a community gas fed boiler. Which is basically just great big.
It's just a massive boiler.
Yeah, that sits out of the way from these flats, and then it just powers the hot water and the.
And there were lots of government schemes to replace them and put new, more efficient ones in. But what surprises people?
And biomass as well.
Yeah, but basically you walk into the properties and there's no boiler. You can see a tank, or you can see no tank. Occasionally, you know that you have hot water on demand. They are supplied, as you say, by these community boilers, which are basically take your gas boiler, times it by 50, and then that is it. And it tends to be sat in a plant room somewhere on site, somewhere near the flats, etc., etc.
Get a lot of complaints from residents there because they always go, it's not working and stuff,
or it's too hot,
or it's too expensive. That's the other thing.
So there's quite a lot to speak about this. I think we need to do heating controls, all sorts of stuff, especially before the cooler weather sets in. We're currently running out of time rapidly.
I was thinking, what other boiler have we missed out?
Well, we can talk.
Someone's going to have a comment.
Right. Okay. Give me your 3 favourite boiler manufacturers
I know a boiler that we haven't, well, not exactly a boiler, but a hot water system that we haven't mentioned, and that's instant hot water points. I mean, you don't see them much in domestic properties, but they exist.
Yeah, they do.
The electric ones under sinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
We used to have a couple
it's
of them
like
in Brentford.
basically a kettle attached to the wall,
Yeah.
and you click it on and it boils it, and then you've got a tiny bit of hot water. They're not great. You sometimes see them in sort of granny flats, in the annex flats.
Yep.
But yeah, not great.
You wouldn't ever think of a situation where you would put one in.
Not really. If I had an outhouse, I want to have hot water there once a month. I need to make a cup of tea because I've been sent there, or you know what I mean. I can't really think of an obvious. Can't think of an obvious situation. 3 favourite boiler manufacturers. Go.
Viessmann, Valiant, and Worcester Bosch.
What about Baxi? You've got Baxi in your house.
It's close fourth.
Basically, if you're going to go, just loads of websites do they talk about all the best boilers, etc., etc. Look for something for high efficiency, which most condensing boilers are.
They're all really
They're
decent.
all pretty good, but the best thing to do is look for the warranties and the guarantees on these boilers. So I had a Valent boiler installed, and mine came with a 10-year warranty. And if it breaks, for labour and parts, if it breaks, they come and fix it. But you have to service it every year.
Yeah.
But that's not a bad thing anyway. Keep it running nicely, etc., etc. That is what you need to look for. Just get something with a decent warranty or guarantee. So if it goes wrong, you can get someone out.
It is worth checking kind of the small print. Unfortunately, it is very boring, but a boiler is an expensive investment. It is worth, knowing what you're getting
100%.
into.
Yeah.
And if you're a landlord, every year you've got to have a gas safety certificate as well.
Yeah.
It's just worth mentioning that. But
Very good. Have we run out of time now?
We've run out of time. I'd love to talk about the ban on gas boilers and new builds.
So, as you said, one quick thing. 2025, Harry?
Yeah, 2025, all new builds will have to have electric boilers. What do we think, briefly?
It's not going to happen.
No.
Or no, new builds in May.
I think it will, with new builds.
New builds it will, because they'll just change the rules and
even
they'll just
thought about what they're going to have instead. What, they're going to have really expensive heat pumps?
Or
instead,
community. It depends if it's multi-dwelling.
But the government doesn't think, does it? Just says stuff. Been a bit mean there.
I'm all for, switching to a more renewable system. I absolutely think so. But also,
not if they're powered by electricity that comes from gas burning anyway,
exactly.
and giant power plants. Let's not brag.
The other thing, EPCs. So since the minimum energy efficiency standards, had a lot of concerned landlords, asking Alan, basically, it's like, what can they do to their property to bring it up to an E at least?
Yeah.
So a boiler replacement or going from a direct electric heaters to a gas boiler would massively increase the EPC.
Agreed.
So that's a very good investment, and Harry, given that the minimum energy efficiency standards now stipulate that when you don't meet the regulations, you have to spend up to
£3,500.
I mean that on a flat will go a long way to put central heating in and a gas boiler. So it's a worthwhile investment, particularly as the energy efficiency standards are just going to creep up.
Right, guys, that's it. That was more than I thought we were going to speak about boilers. I'm not going to lie.
It's going to be a quick podcast.
That's it. Anything else to say? We can speak about anything else next week. I've said that, but we haven't got any opportunity.
Happy news for next week.
Happy news for next week. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.